Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of From the Top podcast and interview series. I'm joined today by Bob Bentz, who is the president and CEO of Purple Gator Marketing Agency. He's also the author of three books, including his most recent book, Relevance Raises Response, as well as being an adjunct professor at West Virginia University. Bob, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Great. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Yeah, so maybe just start by, quick. I know I gave you introduction, but you just talk about introduce yourself and your bit of your background.
For sure. My career started off in the television advertising industry. And it's been now 34 years since I broke off and became an entrepreneur. Started a company called Advanced Telecom Services in 1989, which was automated telephony, both inbound and outbound calls. Then this thing called the internet came along. And I keep telling people that thing's going to catch on one of these days.
Yeah.
When the internet came along, and as it grew, that technology became a bit outdated. And I started to embrace the internet until the point when in 2018, I started my own marketing agency called Purple Gator.
Great. And maybe it's a very unique name. And any thoughts on, where Purple Gator comes from and why you came up with that?
Yeah. Actually, it dates back to 2002, and I was actually in my office in London, in the UK, and I noticed when people's cell phone rang, they rang with a unique ringtone. Now, keep in mind, in 2002, Europe was about 3 or 4 years ahead of North America in terms of cell phone technology. Back in 2002, if I had AT&T and you had T-Mobile, we couldn't even text each other. You could only text within the same carrier. So I actually thought that was really cool when I heard these Spice Girl ringtones on people's phones in the UK. I brought that concept back to the United States, and we started one of the first ever downloadable ringtone sites where you could go online and download a Beyonce ringtone, a 50 Cent ringtone, whatever was your favorite artist. When your phone rang, you heard a unique ringtone. That was a great success story. We built that to 60,000 members, paying $9.99 a month to be a member of the Ringtone Club.
Yeah, it's something. They were so popular. Ringtones, ring back tones, and they just kind of went away. It's interesting what happened there.
Yeah, we had a great 4-year run with it. We ended up selling that part of the company to a publicly traded company in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. I knew that we were kind of reaching the end of the road in terms of online downloadable ringtones because the carriers were starting to make them available on the deck of the phone. And I knew we couldn't be able to compete with that because that was just so much more convenient.
Right. And so Purple Gator is related to the ringback tones?
Yes, to bring the story full circle, we had two different brands online that sold ringtones. One was called Ringing Phone, and the other was called Monster Tones. And my third company, my third brand that we were going to launch for ringtones, I actually went online and looked for any kind of combination of color and animal. And even in 2002, the only one I could find was Purple and Gator. And so I actually just sat on that domain for another 16 years because when we had sold the company, I didn't have a need for it anymore. But I thought it was a cool domain, so just kept it. Because one thing that I learned from Advanced Telecom Services is you can pigeonhole your name of your company to where you only do one thing. I didn't know what the future was going to hold in terms of mobile marketing. So when we started Purple Gator, obviously we don't sell purple alligators. So that would kind of fit everything.
Yeah, except the one on your wall there behind you.
Yeah, right. That one back there.
That's great. And I love that sentiment about naming, right? Because you can absolutely, and that, this for entrepreneurs that may be listening, you can pigeonhole yourself with a name into just doing one thing, and that kind of limits how you can evolve, right?
Yeah, telecom was a sexy name in 1989, but by 2002, it was kind of an antiquated name, and not something that really showed the future.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've really had a lot of adaptability in your career and even forward thinking and then adapting as you see where things are going. How has that been helpful to you?
Yeah, well, I think you have to, especially when you're in the tech world. We
Mm.
had that great 4-year run with the ringtone business, but that was the end. So you have to be able to capitalize quickly on new technology because it isn't going to last forever. Technology today just gets outdated so quickly, and that ringtone business was a perfect example of it. And it's a lot harder for a small company to do that because we don't have the resources. I don't have 15 engineers that can get things going really quickly. So you have to outsource, you have to, bet on that technology. And of course, not everyone you bet on wins. But hopefully, I like to say if 60% of them win, I'm ahead of the game.
Right. Yeah. It's funny, you come up with an idea, you're like, this is such a great idea. And then you go search it, and there's like 15 companies that do it
Yeah,
already.
right. Well,
Especially
I find a lot of people have great ideas. They just don't act on
well, there's that too. Exactly. Right. So it's like that combination of being ready for change and then acting quickly. So being adaptable is great, but if you don't put it into action, might not have the results
it.
you want.
Exactly. You got to take
Okay.
risks.
Yeah. So how do you approach staying current? We know technology is changing. We've just gone through however many major shifts there's been. How do you kind of stay up on top of that? And also, in terms of forecasting where to go next with your business?
Well, I think read a lot. I spend every Saturday morning. I haven't read a book since I wrote one. So,
Mm.
I'm a little embarrassed by that. But the fact is, I probably read way more than the average person because I spend 4 or 5 hours Saturday morning from 7 to noon just reading on everything. And then the other thing is networking. That's really important because you tend to have friends who are about the same age as you. And people my age aren't as adaptable as people that are, Gen Z and millennials. So you need to hang out with them and network with them, and that gets you a lot of new, fresh ideas.
Yeah.
One thing that comes to mind is, before COVID, I would have never believed you could run a successful business from work from home. Just
Mm.
never experienced it, never thought that would work. And during COVID, 2-year run there where we all were required in the state of Pennsylvania to work from home, I learned that this works out pretty good. And you know what? People are saving $6,400 a year by not commuting and not eating out for lunch. And, that half hour that they're spending in traffic, they're actually spending at their desk.
Right.
So it's worked out quite well. So I think we've adapted well in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see sort of, in person coming back, and both have a lot of advantages. I know in my consulting days, I used to travel all over the country to meet with my clients, and that went away. I started even doing it before COVID because they just wanted to save the expenses and not have to pay for me to travel when we can interact so well online. So that is a very good point. So, maybe do you want to just talk maybe about your book a little bit? I'm curious to learn, the kind of the
Yeah, well,
genesis of
thank
that.
you. This is my book, Relevance Raises Response. And I've been teaching for about 10 years now at the graduate level. Started off where I got a referral to the University of Denver. Now I live in Philly, so obviously I wasn't commuting to Denver to teach. But all the MBA courses and the courses that are in integrated marketing communications and such are online now, where people can get their master's degree. The tool that you use to educate the students each week. I had a 12-week course, and I was writing about 10 to 15 pages every week for training for the students.
Hmm.
And when I got to the end of the first class, I was like, I almost have a book here. Uh, I've written probably close to 200 pages worth of content. Why don't I finish it up? And so I wrote the first book, and then of course a lot changed since 2016 when I wrote that first book. So in 2023, it was sorely in need of updating. So I went ahead and took a week up in the Poconos and worked on rewriting the book and bringing it up to date. So the 2023 edition of Relevance Raises Response is available at Amazon and many fine online book retailers. And if you take my course at West Virginia University now, you'll have this book.
Oh, that's great. So you give that book to the students?
Well, they have to buy it,
Well,
no
yeah, but
colleges.
yeah, there you go. Awesome. Well, that's good because it's probably so interlinked with what you're teaching them. It's kind of maybe like an an additional text for the class.
Absolutely, yeah. And I supplement it even now. Even though the book is only less than a year old at this point, I still supplement it in the course with the latest information. So I see a new graph, a new chart, new content that comes up. I'm putting it into the documents that the students receive.
That's great. And I think I love what you said there about how you sort of realized you're writing all this content already, and the distance from having all of that to putting it together in a book, maybe not so big and worth doing.
It would have been a daunting task to start to write, a 380-page book from scratch. But
Yeah.
I kind of was forced into doing it by writing for the class, so it worked out well.
Yeah, and I think for people out there who have an interest in writing a book, I just finished my first book, and it'll be coming out in June. And it's
Congrats.
like, you realize I'm especially in business and in technology, we're writing all the time, even whether it be emails. So for those people who want to write a book, just look at what you're already writing, I think is the lesson, and see what's there, and you can put it together, and you may have a much more start on it than you're aware of.
And I think you'll find that when you finish the book, whether the book is any good or not, you get a lot more respect as an expert in the field, even for people who haven't read the book. And it does open up some opportunities. Look, I know with what you make on books now, I'm never going to get rich selling this book. It's not Marley and me. But what it does do is it gives me credibility, and it gives me speaking opportunities and things like that. And for that, it's well worth the investment of time.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, shifting gears a little bit, to the extent you're comfortable, what are you looking forward to? What's kind of coming up over the next year or so, for Purple Gator?
Well, I think the biggest sea change here in 2023, and many businesses have seen it, is AI.
Yeah.
AI is just an amazing tool, and being a teacher as well, I saw the university freaking out about, oh well, students aren't going to write anything anymore; they're just going to have AI write it, and so it had to change my approach to teaching the class by asking questions that AI couldn't write, or at least couldn't write all of it. So AI is going to really supplement the business that we do. And I know a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, it's going to eliminate all these jobs. Well, computers didn't eliminate jobs, they created jobs. I encourage my students to use AI in the class. I encourage my coworkers. I use it to write some things. But, I always say, don't take it word for word. It's another tool that you have in your research that can help you get to the right copy that you might have to write. So, I see that doing more and more great things in the marketing agency world in the future. And we just need to embrace it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the idea there. I have a son in high school, and the teachers are struggling. And I think what you said there is very critical. I think more about, instead of fighting AI, it's about teaching it and putting it in the proper context, that it is a tool, use it as such. It's not a replacement for everything. It's a tool. And I think we'd be better off teaching how to use it wisely than just fighting it.
Yeah, absolutely. A perfect example. When I was in high school, calculators were just coming out. And, the thought was, well, no one's ever going to learn math anymore. Well, that hasn't happened. And, at first, you weren't allowed to bring a calculator to class, but, go to an engineering school today and everybody's going to have a calculator with them. It's on our phone now, so you don't even need a calculator.
Right. I mean, the only constant is change. We talked about that earlier. It's about embracing that change is critical. If we think back, right? Like they said, oh, you're never going to have a calculator in your pocket all the time. Well, guess what? Now we have, more than
now we do.
Right. And I also think that it's really about elevating. If we were still manually plowing fields, we wouldn't be where we are today, right? So it's about not just learning to add, but how do I use my calculator to have even higher level thinking? I think it's the exact same thing with AI. How do I use this resource so that I can build upon it and take things even further than I did previously?
Yep. Some people are going to be better at asking the right questions to ChatGPT and getting the right information back.
Absolutely. Yeah, great stuff there. So this is the question I always ask. If you can wave a magic wand over your business and have any result that you want, what would that be and why?
Well, I always want to grow businesses. One of the best advice that I got early on from a mentor was a business should always be either growing or shrinking. You don't ever want to be status quo. Well, I'm in growth mode now, and that's what I get a personal great thrill out of is seeing the growth. But the other mantra I like to live by is it's not your patents, it's not your the equipment you have in your office. Your employees are your greatest asset. And, if your employees are growing with the company, both personally, professionally, and financially, you're going to succeed. So, if you could wave that wand, and it's hard for smaller companies to compete with the big companies on that. There's some things that big companies can do that we can't afford to do at a small company. But if you give people the opportunity to grow, the end result of that is going to be the success of the company.
Yeah, I love that. I've been talking a lot with my clients and prospects about this idea of building your team and investing in your employees. And the number one job of any leader is to create more leaders. And so I love that sentiment that investing in your people is a huge component to how you can grow and be successful.
Yeah, it's always an inconvenience when a good employee leaves the company. But I always feel like if they leave for the right reasons, I'm happy for them.
Yeah.
There is short-term pain when they leave.
Sure.
But in the long term, hopefully you're able to replace that person with another quality person.
Right. Absolutely. So just in closing, any advice you might give to an aspiring entrepreneur or business leader?
You're going to work harder than ever. You're going to have more stress than ever. But the rewards are there. The highs are higher and the lows are lower.
Oh, that's a good one. Highs are higher and lows are lower. That's great. And I think the lesson I've kind of taken from our conversation today is also about that adaptability and embracing change and more riding the wave than trying to, fight against it, which I think has come through in what you've shared today.
Thank you.
So just so many great things there. I can't thank you enough for being on the show. Really appreciate it. And so just in closing, it was great talking with you, Bob, and to everyone listening, thank you for joining, and we'll see you in the next episode.